Welcome. I hope your belief in the law of attraction is growing. And today, let's talk about ignoring the 3D. Neville Goddard talked about the effortless way. He called it the path of least action. I mean, we can commonly refer to this concept today. A lot of us think of it as the path of least resistance. And I just want you to keep that in mind for now. You may hear people referring to ignoring the 3D and that the 3D is not real or the 3D reality does not exist. But what does that really mean? And how can we take the path of least action to become what we want? And I say become what we want instead of get what we want because it might be easier to understand this concept instead of thinking about manifestation as getting something, because creation is already finished. There is nothing to get, it's already there. And this might be one of the hardest things to grasp or understand or even believe in the beginning, but you have to accept and become it in order to see it. Once you accept your assumptions and you see it in your mind, you can then start to see it with your eyes in your 3D current reality and circumstances. Manifesting is finally revealing or being able to see what your current circumstances, based on past assumptions, did not allow you to see. So, because your current 3D reality is a reflection of your past beliefs and assumptions, you can't look at the current circumstances for proof. Current reality is based on what your past assumptions were. Okay, that's what you see now. And the shift from your present state to your desired state is a psychological one. And what Neville Goddard was saying is that in order to make this psychological journey to change your state from the current 3D reality to the one that you want, you must do so with the least amount of effort. And he says the psychological equivalent of least effort is mere assumption. You just assume what you want to be. You assume who you are. Creation is already finished. You just need to unlock it. And you do that by being what you want to be, believing and not trying to be. Think of a famous musician, actor, celebrity. Most of them felt and acted like celebrities and believed in their fame before the rest of the world noticed that they were famous and gave them the proof, gave them the feedback in their current circumstances, their 3D reality, what they could see. They believed it themselves. Ask most people who have changed their image. They will tell you it just happened. They just lived that lifestyle. And, there was an instant shift from the person they used to be to who they are now. And so, also think of somebody who, lost weight or started dressing in a different style, and they're unnoticeable to the people around them. They just mentally assumed that persona and became that person before the 3D reality reflected it back to them. So ignoring the 3D reality basically means controlling your attention from the inside as opposed to having your attention directed by the outside, directed by circumstances of the immediate present. So you need to believe that you can have, be, or do whatever you want by simply controlling your attention from within and not allowing your senses to dictate what your assumptions are. This might be the most difficult thing to grasp, and it can be easier said than done. And not only when you're starting this out, but this is something that people are going to struggle with throughout their conscious manifesting journey, because we're always manifesting. But, when you start to try to take control of this, this is trying to avoid your current circumstances, your 3D reality, is going to be something that most people are going to need to work on continuously and not, learn and get better at not worrying about the outer circumstances. I mean, that just might be my assumption, but, if you feel that the 3D reality is really hard to grapple with when it comes to ignoring it and pushing forward with your assumption, this is definitely something that you can get better at. Not worrying about the 3D and the belief that your continued assumption and your imagination is capable of doing everything you ask of it and more is the secret. If you think you're having trouble ignoring the 3D, you can try this. See that you can control your thoughts for shorter periods of time and build on that. Coming out of the gates, it might be very difficult to ignore your circumstances, which is normal. Some people might have you believe that, I just did it, and the 3D was never a problem. And I would argue that for most people, ignoring the 3D is going to be one of the biggest problems. Again, that's my assumption. And the more you practice, and maybe the better you get at it, hopefully you don't feel that way, and ignoring the 3D is easy. But if you are having trouble ignoring the 3D, this is what you do. You get better at it, and you start with short periods of time and you build on that. So what you're going to want to do is set a time each day and consciously direct your attention from within. Basically what that means is you think about the things you want to think about and try to feel your desired state without focusing on your current circumstances, the present 3D reality around you, what you see with and feel with your senses. You can start by doing this for 10 minutes or even 5 minutes, and you will get better at it, and it will begin to feel natural. And before long, you'll start to do this unconsciously. You'll start to do this all the time and truly feel and believe your assumptions without worrying about the 3D. Neville Goddard says to think about thoughts and moods that you deliberately determine. Then those things that now restrict you fade and drop away. The day you achieve control of your movements, of your attention in the subjective world, you are master of your fate. You will no longer accept the dominance of outside conditions or circumstances. So basically, you need to believe that everything you want is already here now. Another way to think of this is, imagine that you're walking in a dark forest that contains everything inside of it, but you can only see what your lantern is able to illuminate. You can control where to direct or point the lantern. Just because the light of your lantern is not shining on what is around you does not mean that those things aren't there. Okay, you just haven't given yourself the opportunity to see it. All you have to do is point the lantern. And you think of the lantern as, your thoughts and attention, where you want to see. So you point the lantern where you want to see, and you will see what's already there. Creation is finished. The trees, the shrubs were always there, but now you see them. The other path, is now visible because the light is shining on it, whereas before it was dark. Okay, it's where you focus your attention. Imagine this idea or concept from a bird's eye view even, to get a better feel for, how much we are not capable of seeing, even though it's already right there around us. If you look down on the person carrying the light in a huge forest, they look minuscule in size. and so is the light that shines from the lantern. So it has to be directed in order to see more. The lantern can't light up the whole forest, right? So this idea of ignoring the 3D is straight from Neville Goddard's The Power of Awareness, and I'm sure some other lectures as well. But around chapter 12 of The Power of Awareness, maybe like 11, 12, 13, 14, around there, even though he doesn't really use the term the 3D in that book, this is what he's talking about. So when you hear people talk about ignoring the 3D reality, it's all about focusing your attention and not worrying about outside circumstances. And I really encourage you to read The Power of Awareness for yourself. If you take one thing away from this, remember that once you start to build little successes in your manifestation journey, you will naturally start to get better at ignoring the 3D and believing in your ability to control what your conscious senses are allowed to experience. And you control this through your assumption. You will not need to see proof in order to believe. It's commonly known that every millionaire was a millionaire in their head first. And so the path of least resistance, the path of least action, is not to fight your assumptions, but to just assume it to be true. So have a little faith. There is something to this. I hope this helps.